Athens City Council. It's Monday, July 1st, 2013.
Tonight, council will be meeting in a regular session. And first thing we do is establish a quorum. We have 6 council members present. Our newest council member, Jennifer Cochran, had another commitment this evening, so she won't be here, but 6 is definitely a quorum. We do have 2 sets of minutes that we would like to approve. Could I have a motion that we accept the minutes of the regular sessions held June 13th and June 17th of 2013?
A motion that we accept the minutes from June 3rd and June 17th.
And a second.
All those in favor of accepting these minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Opposed? Nobody? Okay. These minutes are accepted. Communications. I have just a quick communication reminding council members that we have a luncheon date with the President McDavis at Salam on Wednesday, not this week, but next week, July 10th, at noon. I think we will have the city council credit card available, so you don't need to bring any money yourselves. Okay? Seriously, and we earlier this evening we were just talking about some talking points that we might be discussing. Obviously, the Ridges, Halloween, and maybe a meeting of. We tried to set up a meeting between City Council and Student Senate, and that didn't go anywhere, so maybe we can bring that up again. There was some discussion about maybe the Board of Trustees and City Council ought to get together. Maybe we could have a bus tour of some neighborhoods that
I think that's a great idea.
so those are things that we might discuss. And if any of you have issues that you would like to bring up, remember, we are going to eat lunch too, so we don't want to just put everybody on the spot. But please let me know, and we'll kind of steer the discussion as we can. Okay. That's all I have. We have reports and communications from other elected officials. Mayor Weil.
Let's see, a couple of things, of course, is there will be, of course, the concert on the Elms, of course, which will be with Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture, so expect some cannons to be firing, I guess, at the end of it. This, of course, is in for July 4th, but it will be on July 3rd, because that's a Wednesday. Be aware that, of course, there will be, let's see, quite a few things going on the 3rd and the 4th. I know fireworks for us are at 10 p.m. rather, July 3rd. That's on East State Street. I believe the pool is open and free for both days, the 3rd and the 4th. The suggestion, of course, bring a food donation for the local food pantry. Let's see, there will be a parade. I believe it's 9:30 from East Union down Clark Carpenter to State, to Morris, May, to the library. Also that because it is a holiday, the 4th, city offices will be closed, and the recycling and trash pickup on Thursday will be pushed to Friday. Let me see what else I have here. I think there was an email that went out, rather a news release, that there's work going on Patton, Alexander, Marietta Street for some water line repairs. Just be aware of that. We're also doing hydrogen flushing throughout the city, so therefore there's an expectation of sometimes the water will come out brown. And I know that the performance area at Arts West sometime in August 18th to maybe about the 31st will be closed as they swap out the pews and do the floor and put in chairs. And I think I've covered everything that I need to cover on that. No planning commission meeting either on this Thursday because it's a holiday.
Comments? Questions? Auditor Hecht?
Just a quick follow-up about the CCA program for the tax payers. We discussed it last week at length, but I think you all got a copy of the draft letter that we sent out. A handful of people received letters that shouldn't have in error, and they should have all received a letter acknowledging that they did not have any more responsibility to comply with that. So if anybody else has any other questions, you know, you can refer them to me or to Tina, our tax administrator, but that should be settled by now, I hope. That's it.
Any questions for the auditor? Law Director Lang.
No report this evening, Mr. President.
Okay. Excuse me. Then we'll move on to ordinances for third reading. Ordinance 7213, an ordinance renewing a revocable license to the owner of 22 Ohio Avenue for an existing fence on the city right-of-way, introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adopt 7213.
Second.
This is pretty straightforward right away. Something that is interesting is that when certain types of property exchanges happen, such as selling from one person to another, that certain right-of-ways have to be also renewed at that time because they are considered personal in nature, and a fence is considered personal in nature as opposed to a business sign or something that goes with the business. So this is for an existing fence that's there
Which is on the right-of-way.
on the right-of-way. And this is for 10 years.
Okay, all those in favor of ordinance 7213 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, this ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 7313, an ordinance declaring certain police department firearms no longer needed for a municipal purpose, and amending the 2013 appropriation ordinance for the purchase of new firearms, introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt ordinance 7313.
Second?
Briefly, this particular ordinance allows the police department to trade in a number of firearms. I believe it's a total of 52, which would then garner $10,160, and we will then purchase 34 new firearms, and that would be approximately, I believe, what do we have here? It's a total of 18,000, and then the difference. And the company we'd be working with in Cleveland, to trade them in, is Vance Law Enforcement Sales, and they require background checks and do not sell to people that are not allowed to own firearms. I believe that covers it with this particular ordinance.
Questions or comments regarding ordinance 7313?
Just to kind of reiterate, these are in most cases 25-year-old sidearms. So they're outdated. A lot of them are the police officers' their own protection sidearm. So, and the others are shotguns, from what I believe. So there's no high munitions clip type of weaponry that's being traded in.
This is standard issued equipment.
And some are obviously confiscated, some of the other ones, basically whatever's been impounded over the years.
Right, which get turned in for
Well, we
trade-in value?
Yes.
Is that what? Yes.
Yeah, you were given a list, I think, of the different trade-in ones. I recognize the Jennings there with a trade-in value of $25. I think that's considered, I don't think they even make them anymore, but they were considered the...
Should be an antique.
Well, I don't know about that.
Not a
It was considered-
collectible?
What?
Could be a collectible.
We could take it to antique show.
Sounds like they're flintlocks.
It was considered a Saturday night special in its time.
Great.
All those in favor of ordinance 7313 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. This ordinance is adopted. We'll move on to ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 8213, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 29 Housing Regulations, Chapter 29.33 Fire Protection Systems, and declaring an emergency. Member Paul, anything? Okay. Ordinance 8313, an ordinance amending Ordinance O2910, establishing fees as required by the Athens City Code. Ordinance 8413, an ordinance amending Ordinance 7813, authorizing construction and construction engineering associated with the Safe Routes to School sidewalk improvements, Project 268, and declaring an emergency. Member Patton? Nothing? Okay. Moving on to ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 8713, an ordinance granting a revocable license to Horizon Telecom, Inc. for use of a portion of the city right-of-way to accommodate relocating utilities underground at the wastewater treatment plant and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend 8713.
Second.
And
So you're asking for a suspension of
Yes.
the rules because?
based on the fact that the construction has already begun and the Horizon Telecom needs to move forward with their aspects of the plan.
We are deciding to suspend the rules on ordinance 8713. All in favor of that suspension signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, Member Pappy, the rules have been suspended.
So I move to adopt 8713.
Second.
And again, this is a revocable license to Horizon Telecom for their use of our city right-of-way to take care of the utilities that are a part of the wastewater treatment improvement project. So I guess, I think we've really discussed this quite a lot. This is just one of the areas that needs to happen for the continuing construction there.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor of ordinance 8713 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 8813, an ordinance granting a revocable license to the owner of 39 Hooper Street for an existing fence on the city right-of-way. Introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
So this is, again, a revocable license. This property changed hands, and as was discussed earlier by Member Fall, when this happens, we need to renew or change the ownership of the city right-of-way in terms of who owns it and everything. So that's kind of what we're doing here at 39 Hooper Street.
Any comments? Thank you. Moving on to ordinance 8913, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Clean Ohio Fund for the purchase of property from the Hope family and declaring an emergency. Introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe my understanding is that I am encouraged to move to suspend the rules this evening. Is that correct? Okay.
It's not necessary, depending if we're going to have another special session Monday.
There's other things. I don't want to suspend a bunch of things tonight if we
Sure.
can have a special session on Monday, since we're already meeting for committee meeting, because that gives another week.
Yes.
You know, it's not 2 weeks, but it's still a week for people to consider it. So I just feel more comfortable.
The
Summer
the
seems to-
expectation, since we won't be meeting in August, we'll
Right.
need to
We'll just kind of
sum
move
up
things up,
Okay.
yeah. I feel more comfortable doing
So
that.
I guess you can hold off on the suspension.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just present so I rescind my request for suspension of the rules.
I don't think you got a second, did you?
No, whoever did died.
Gosh.
And the ordinance is kind of self-explanatory.
Yes.
Where is this Hope property?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This has been discussed in committee, and the Rec Advisory Board as well has reviewed it, and I believe the mayor's office and our planner have been reviewing this plan as well. So this is property on this side of 682, if that makes sense.
Basically, it's bordered by the Hocking River to the east or southeast, 682 to the southwest, I believe, and the railroad, I think, to the west, I guess, northwest. It's floodplain, it's property would be adjacent to our railroad trestle there, our bike path that will continue sooner or later to Armitage Road and onward, I hope. So this is a portion to add. We'll be doing a preservation easement on this, so
And
it will
it's,
not...
it's in the flood, it's in the wellhead protection.
Yes, it
so-
is. That's
So,
So there's lots of reasons to acquire
great
this.
conservation value right there.
And my, oh, go on.
No, I was going to say that could therefore have potential as a well field at some
I
point.
don't think you can do that under Clean Hawaii, under
I
their,
don't think so. I don't
No.
know. I don't think that,
I
I
don't
think
think
there
it's
was
a
discussion of that. I don't
conservation.
think we're going to go
No.
with it, though.
Okay.
I know we asked for some conditions and waivers in the process.
I don't think they give waivers very often.
For conflict.
For, it's pretty strict with the Clean Ohio Conservation grants, so,
And-
having gone through several of them, so.
And these two, this ordinance and the following ordinance are tied together with the acquisition, the agreement to allow the mayor into purchasing the property from the Clean Ohio Fund, and then the next ordinance addressing, working on.
We pretty much discussed with 8913.
Thank you.
We'll move on to ordinance 9013, an ordinance authorizing engineering, construction, construction engineering, and construction of the Northwest Athens Bikeway Spur, Phase 2, project number 271, and declaring an emergency. Also introduced by Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I do believe we need to suspend this. I believe the bidding's going to be starting soon,
Okay.
or rather, putting out the bid, yes.
So having heard that, Mr. President, I kindly request that we consider suspending the rules for 9013.
Second?
The request is to suspend the rules on ordinance 9013. All those in favor of suspension of the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, Member Butler, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. And then this particular ordinance is tied to the previous one and authorizing the engineer, construction, and engineering of the Northwest Athens Bikeway Spur in this particular Phase 2 area. Working with the Clean Ohio Conservation Fund, will reimburse 75% of the eligible costs up to $181,733,000. So our share as a city would be $28,000. Thank you, Mr. President.
Do you move to adopt it?
Yes, thank you.
I'll
I
second.
don't know if I requested move for adoption. Thank you.
I'll second.
And we have a second. Any other comments regarding?
I request that we find a better name for it. It seems like,
Well, once it gets tied in, it probably won't be a spur anymore, so we'll have to think of something else to call it. It will eventually, I imagine,
it can have naming rights, right? Yeah.
I think,
Hope something.
The
we'll
Hope
think
Spur.
about it. Actually, I think it's up to the service safety director.
I knew that was coming. Somehow I just knew it.
Sorry, I got us off track. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet.
Any other
Naming?
comments?
Frivolous comments?
Dare you? Okay, ordinance 9013, we have suspended the rules, and now we are asking to adopt the ordinance. All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 9013 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay. Ordinance 9013 is adopted. We'll move on to ordinance 9113. An ordinance amending ordinance 6313, authorizing construction and construction engineering of the wastewater treatment plant improvements, project number 266, authorizing an interfund transfer and declaring an emergency. Member Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we consider ordinance 9113 under suspension.
Second.
The reason for this being is this pertains to the appropriation for the wastewater treatment plant improvements project that is currently underway.
Okay, we have a request to suspend the rules on ordinance 9113. All those in favor of suspending the rules signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Member Nisley, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of ordinance 9113.
Second?
And as we discussed in committee last week, our original, this is amending an appropriation ordinance that we passed earlier in the year. It's amending 6313. The original appropriation for that was $19,126,027.47. That was what we anticipated the loan amount to be. When the loan papers arrived from the authorities, the final amount of that loan was $18,577,926. So it was $548,101.47 less, and this is the capitalized interest. So the state auditors have advised us to reduce the amount of the appropriation so it matches the final loan amount.
Thank you. The rules have been suspended. We are now voting on accepting ordinance 9113. All those in favor of accepting this ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Ordinance 9113 has been adopted. Ordinance 9213, an ordinance amending the 2013 appropriation ordinance, also introduced by Councilmember Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we consider 9213 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The reason being that these are appropriations for the city that need to be made immediately.
Okay. We have a request to suspend the rules on ordinance 9213. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay. Member Nisley, the rules have been suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of ordinance 9213.
Second.
And this ordinance has two parts to it. One of them we have discussed last week, and these are about the medical fund payments that are made. These are amounts that are withheld from the departments for the medical payments made during the year. We had increased that amount for the first time in 5 years earlier this year, but the auditor and deputy auditor have reviewed our records and realized that certain departments need to make an additional commitment from their departmental funds of $750 between now and the end of the year per employee in their department. So this particular ordinance gives those amounts that will be charged to the different departments. $9,000 to the street fund, $3,000 to the recreation fund, $4,500 to the community center fund, $15,750 to the water fund, and $14,250 to the sewer fund. So these amounts will be deducted from the budget. So and to clarify again, they will not be deducted from employee wages. These are part of the departmental budgets and that are costs for covering the medical expenses between now and the end of the year. The second part is something that's come to our attention, that we need to appropriate $4,000 to Law Administration Building Improvements, Fund 585, to replace the air conditioning in the dispatch center. So given the temperatures that we've been having and likely will continue to have through the summer, we need to get that repaired immediately, or replaced, excuse me.
Any comments or questions regarding this discussion? The rules have been suspended. We are looking to adopt ordinance 9213. All those in favor of adopting this ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. This ordinance is adopted. Ordinance 9313, an ordinance authorizing acquisition of the Dowler family property on Cardiff Lane to remain as undeveloped parkland and declaring an emergency. Member Butler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe, if I'm correct, that suspension is in order for the rules this evening for the timeliness of this and
Not
the...
quite ready.
We're not?
No.
We don't need to. I thought last week when we were discussing this in committee that there was...
Yeah, but considering we'll have a special session, we
That's
should be able
right.
to catch up
Okay.
before it's all done.
I'll have to check my calendar to see if I'm available for that special session.
Next Monday.
It sounds special.
Okay.
So, no need to suspend. This particular ordinance, Mr. President, was discussed in committee meeting. Our planner did an eloquent job reviewing this in great detail. The Dollar family is being very kind and generous in offering land and a contribution of $15,000 towards this 15 acres. And there are some deed restrictions that will be attached to the property, keeping it a recreation woodland area, wildlife area, with limiting it to biking, hiking, and walking. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other comments? Member Packard?
I wonder if we need to do a little bit of outreach to some of the people that live, whose properties are right there, and maybe at the end of Far Hills. I've gotten some comments from people concerned with access and just maybe the lay of the land, and there's some different issues that, and I don't know how we want to approach that. So that's since we talked about in committee, and I know we do need to move, and I don't know if you've heard of it from any Southsiders, Jeff?
I've received an email from only one person.
Okay.
And I've had communication with that person, and we were basically haven't convinced one another. So I'm in favor, the person is not. So-
And I received from people other than,
Sure.
from other people, yes, Steve. Go ahead.
I agree with
You're fine, it's fine.
I agree with reaching out to individuals in the neighborhoods, because we're talking about, 2, possibly 3 access points that we're dealing with. There's Far Hills, there's Cardiff, which is a cul-de-sac, and then, there could be something down the road higher up on Longview Heights. So I have read the same email of concern about, what's going to happen with access points and volume of the number of spaces. I too am in favor of this acquisition. However, I think it is worth reaching out to the community and to people who live in those neighborhoods to
And what?
touch base with
what
them.
kind of outreach are you thinking of?
Well, this is primarily in the second ward, and so I'm wondering if maybe through our second ward rep.
Sure, Jeff, yeah.
I made a suggestion to the person that contacted me that perhaps the Southside Neighborhood Association could get together and discuss this. I thought it'd be an ideal topic for discussion, and that was almost shot down before I could even get the email sent. So I don't know how much...
Well, my comment came from people not of this email. So these are other people who live in the area, so I don't...
I would agree. I think it would be helpful to have a meeting so that people who do have concerns and issues, they might raise some points that we haven't thought about in terms of, once we've acquired the property, what will some of the management issues might be. I know we're intending it primarily as passive, and I know that the person that contacted you, Jeff, and also Steve and several other members is concerned because the area is slip-prone. They also raise a question about Camp Rotan that's owned by the Rotary, that's a private property, and it might help if we clarified how that's going to work together well. So I think some kind of public format where we give people, make an announcement so that people could attend would be very helpful. And it might not have to be. Southside Community Association has not been active in meeting for a while, but there's a list, and it wouldn't have to be an official meeting of the Southside Community Association, but there's quite an extensive email list for them.
I think that it needs to be recognized that this is a long-term plan for the city, and that similar things have been going on in the whole necklace of Athens by Athens Conservancy and Athens Trail and other organizations. And I think that something that needs to be recognized is that when property is protected by conservation easements or outright ownership for conservation purposes, that land values usually go up around those neighboring community, neighboring properties. And I think that in the experience of Athens Trails, the conservation is that most people who end up using these things are the neighbors themselves. And so I think that we can do outreach, which is a great idea, but I also think that we need to look at the long view. And I mean, it's not going to be developed in the next year or two, that it's kind of a greater plan that to help Athens promote its environmental sustainability and things that were talked about last week, and passive recreation, which is a selling point for Athens. So I think that we need to balance it, and this is a very typical sort of issue that comes up when conservation pieces come into play, especially in neighborhoods. So.
Next week, we are scheduled for committees to meet, so we might simply invite everybody to a committee and have Paul Loeb, our planner.
We could do that. We can
Present
have it under
also.
planning and development.
Yeah.
Be more than happy to chair that.
Mayor Weil?
Really, again, when you talk about anything like this developing, I would estimate between 3 to 5 to 10 years, because really this will link up with the Guandi property, but that really doesn't add much to it. I don't expect anything to actually develop in this, as I say, to 5 years at the very least.
Right.
Again, Camp Rotan is on the other side, is a long way away. We could bring it up in committee. The next thing to do is, if you've been approached by people, is to have them come if they have an interest. The next thing to do is we can compile a packet of what's going on exactly. Essentially, it's the conservation part of it, the request for a donation of this, or rather the selling of this to us. It is slip prone, so development of that property would be iffy at best. So there's only so much you could do with this type of property.
But we know that other slip-prone areas have been developed, so nothing is more protective than having the land and conservation protection. So.
We're also aware that there's a dearth of green space, although it looks like there's a lot of green space on the south side in terms of public green space and public meeting place.
Yep.
So really, as you say, if you've been approached by people, the next thing to do is we can compile the information that we have, what we're trying to do, both long-term and short-term. But again, we've got this opportunity to add something to a piece of property, the Guandi property in particular. I mean, it's the conversations I'm having with Paul Loeb is you really want something to go point A to point B. At the very least, it's a circle right now from one end to the other. But again, I've just received one email myself, and again, the arguments there of being slip-prone, whether it's possessed by the public or private sector, to me, would make a difference. You still have to design it, you still have to engineer it, and you have to clear it in all cases. If there's a lot of feedback on that and a lot of people want to meet, we could always put something together in the next couple of weeks. I know when we were doing the turnover to Route 33 to Pomeroy Road to us, there was a meeting at that church on Pomeroy Road. Maybe that would be something to schedule if you really want to do an informational session on that. But again, I don't think it's really that big a deal. It's just for the far future from my point of view.
Could we encourage people to come next week? I think maybe just having something before we actually purchase it might give some of these people, the people who contacted me, which are not the same ones we're talking about here, I can let them know to come next week.
Okay, I'm loath to bring Paul Loeb back to reiterate everything. My advice would be to go on the web and look at the streaming video of last week's session.
Right.
That would give you a good synopsis, and if you have questions, shoot it to us. My administration will find, and we'll answer them as best we can. Again, it's incremental. What you're seeing is over time in the Sells Park area was incremental, working our way towards Strauss Run. So now we have, basically property owned to the state park. It took time to do that. We were fortunate enough to be able to, with the help of some good citizens, to get some Clean Ohio funds to work our way through it. No different than our Northwest Bike Spur, which is a spur because it's not ready to go the rest of the way. And, the intention is to get to Moonville someday, but that's not next week, that's not next year, that's not probably for another 5-10 years if we're lucky. So, the idea is to do a piece at a time as we can do it. Rome wasn't built in a day, and the park won't be the same, won't be done the same way either. So there's time to look at this and see what's going to happen. And again, the future administration may decide this is not where to go. They may decide it's better paved, You never know.
So we will plan on having a committee session.
Plan Development Committee? Sounds like you've just...
Well, I think
set one
that
up.
if people want to, I think that there can be an agenda item to have people come and discuss their concerns if they so wish.
Okay.
I don't really want to have Paul Logue have to come back either.
Right.
So
Right.
that could be an open, an agenda item to have people come and sing the praises or,
Or caveats.
right.
So we encourage people to go back and watch the meeting that occurred on the 24th of June to be brought up to speed when our planner was discussing everything. And then next week, July 8th, we will again discuss.
If there are questions?
If there are questions and people have anything they would like to
and
discuss.
concerns. Yes.
Fair enough.
And so we will move on. Ordinance 9413, an ordinance authorizing an additional extension of the current franchise agreement with Ohio Power Company for use of the city right-of-way as authorized by Ordinance 13512 and declaring an emergency. Member Fall.
Thank you, President Sands. I'm not going to suspend this, though it kind of needs it because I would like to hold it over till the special session on Monday. This is an extension of the current agreement. Unfortunately, many of the things that we thought were really good to include in a new agreement did not come to fruition. So we will just go forward with the current agreement that we have, and maybe the next time around when we are dealing with powers that are a little more progressive in the Ohio Power Company, maybe we can include some of the things that they do know our concerns now that this process went forward. So we tried.
We'll keep trying.
We'll keep trying, but we do need to have the agreement in place, and right now it's kind of being
It's being massaged.
yes, I think that's a good way of saying it. It's kind of day-to-day right now, so.
We have a resolution for first reading. Resolution 1013, a resolution declaring it necessary to replace existing curbs and sidewalk deemed in poor condition as part of the Columbus Road, North Lancaster Street Infrastructure Improvements Project and declaring an emergency. Member Pappy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. So this is an ongoing discussion of the improvements that we're going to be making to Columbus Road and Lancaster Street. And as part of that, we need to look at the sidewalk repair. Especially on Lancaster Street, the sidewalks are in pretty poor condition. So this is a process that we have gone through. We just went through this process with University Estates and that whole process. So the bottom line is that sidewalk repairs will probably total over $100,000. And,
I thought it was like 54. I'm not sure about that.
well,
That's the city's share.
that's
City
the
share?
city share, and
Oh, yeah,
we
okay.
think it's about 50
Oh, total
for
amount,
the
yes,
owners.
yes.
All total. So, based on linear footage of the property on the street. Okay? So we're just kind of wanting the public and those people who live on the street to know this is coming down the pike, so to speak. And it's part of the process by the Ohio Revised Code to notify and let everyone know that this is what's going on.
This will be followed by other processes.
Right.
Including a review board, like we did with the University of States and all the other, like Carbon Street. So this is the first step of a
Yes, this is the first resolution, then you'll go through the process of actually, if there's questions about it, we've got a list together of the
Mobilization board.
prices right now by linear footage. The parts have to repair, some frontage does not need repair, some does. It actually, the option, of course, is they could do it themselves. Usually it depends on the price and what they want to do, if they can afford it, or they choose to. They have to follow our specs, of course.
Right, and it's better to get it all done at one time with one contractor. That tends to hold the cost down, generally.
Generally,
And
yes.
this is a small part of the project. The entire project is going to cost over $1 million. So the sidewalks are a piece of the puzzle here.
Yes, if you've been on North Lancaster there, the sidewalks at the very least have to be raised up. The curbs are pretty much almost level with the pavement at this point. Some are in bad repair, some are not. So this is first step. We'll probably end up with an assessment board. This is no different than the process you've gone through already a couple times.
Right.
Member Butler, did you have any?
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just going to echo what the mayor was saying about the concern with safety and the sidewalks not being elevated above the street level. And that my understanding in speaking with the Public Works Director is that the improvements and the process fixing this is going to make it much safer, more pedestrian-friendly, and I think will be a vast improvement.
Patty?
To kind of follow up on that, it'll also, vastly improve ADA accessibility throughout that particular corridor. It's, for anyone who's seen the heaved sidewalks here and there in the cracks and potholes, it's a challenge for an individual in a wheelchair or even on crutches or having a cane to be able to navigate up and down that stretch of the sidewalk.
Well, and all of us are only temporarily able-bodied, and
Right.
that it's inevitable that we'll want accessibility.
Again, just to remind everyone, we follow Ohio Revised Code on this in terms of how this process proceeds, so that's what we're doing.
You can always go onto Law Writer, I think is the Ohio Revised Code site, and just check it out yourself. What is it, 727.25?
727 and 723.
Okay.
Moving on to announcements and other business. The announcement I have is to remind again, next Monday, we do have lunch with President McDavis on Wednesday, July 10th at noon. Any other announcements? Council members? Mayor?
If possible, committee, finance personnel, planning and development, obviously. Just remind everybody that July 11th FEMA map public hearing at the community center, 4 to 7. Anybody who lives in a floodplain.
Excuse me. Oh, and
Special session. yeah.
And we will be planning, we will have committee meetings beginning at 7 and followed immediately with a special session of council to deal with some of these ordinances that we've been talking about. And likely we will have a meeting on the Monday to follow that. Okay, opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on the agenda. We have a citizen who,
A regular,
who
regular
seems
citizen.
very satisfied, okay. So we will call this part of our meeting adjourned, move into executive session, so we will ask our citizen to leave momentarily.
Yeah, since you didn't say anything, you know.
I motion that we go into executive session with all members of council, Law Director Lang, Mayor Weil, and Kathy Heck, Auditor. to
Deputy Auditor.
And we
Deputy-
include the deputy auditor to these things.
So, all those, everybody that I mentioned.
Okay. All those in favor of this second?
Is there a second to that?
Did we?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of including these people signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Can I say do a roll call vote on that, please?
Need a roll call?
Roll call? Okay. Member Butler?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye. I was waiting for my name.
Aye.
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 Okay.
Now we just have to scoot Debbie out. She can go home.
Not before Jim signs the